I'm delighted to welcome Peter Gore, who's a Professor of Practice for Ageing and Vitality at the University of Newcastle, officially the longest job title of the day, who really is one of the leading experts in this field. And this is, he says, a huge and diverse market, but one that, if approached properly, can reap significant rewards. So I'll hand straight over to you, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought it was interesting. Michael just said that markets, retail is changing, and actually what I'm going to show is that people are changing too. And actually we need to take both into account, clearly both into account. So what I'm going to do is a bit of a whistle-stop tour through some stats. So if you want copies of these things afterwards, that's not a problem. So don't feel you have to, in fact, it will be impossible to write it all down. So let's tackle a few things. Really, what are the changing demographics and why? What are the attitudes of older people? How are they changing? How do they spend their money? What are the physical sides of that? How do people change as they age? And if we want to take account of older people, what do we actually have to do that? What are the processes and so on? So I'll try to go through this fairly quickly and then stop a little bit on some more specifics around the kitchen. So the first thing about ageing is it's not very good, but the alternative is worse. And various people have commented on that in the past. So we're all ageing, like it or not. But it actually is not all about a sort of medical problem. And this is interesting stat. This was back in 1999. Academic in Chicago said, well, actually what's going to happen is we'll reach a natural level at 85. We'll age, people get to 85 and then we'll stop aging. And a chap called James Verpel in the Max Planck Institute in Germany said, well, actually, I think that's probably not true, and here's why. And if you look on this, I know you can't see the detail at the back, see if I can. In 1840, the average life expectancy at birth in the best countries in the world was 45. Currently, that's somewhere around 85. And what's happened is that's gone up. Actually, life expectancy goes up 5 hours a day in Western Europe every single day, and it has done since 1840. So tomorrow, life expectancy will be another 5 hours. We actually call it Newcastle the 29-hour day, 24 for now and 5 for the future. It's an extraordinary statistic, but probably the most important thing to take from that is everybody thinks that's going to stop, and every now and again governments say, okay, no, it's going to level off. No, it's not. There's no evidence that it's leveling off. And in fact, the government... So there's obviously some issues with different versions of PowerPoint here, but so you can't read all of that. But this was a group of MPs in Parliament, a committee who looked at it and said that the most striking statistic was that the mortality rate of the over 65s had dropped by 30% in an 8-year period, which is an extraordinary statistic. So what used to happen, the reason it went up was because children didn't die at birth, women didn't die in childbirth, childhood diseases, all of those kinds of things. So we fixed all of those. We've fixed the middle-aged diseases, not perfectly, of course, but we've made a huge difference. Now what's happening is older people are living longer and better. And that's a kind of good news and bad news story for you. So let's just put some numbers around it. This is what the population in the UK looked like in 2010. So that's 50, that's 65, that's 85. I wouldn't call anybody old under 85 these days. That's kind of really what we sort of think of as the old. That's what it looks like in 2043, 30-odd years' time, and you can just see, if I go back, you just see the huge growth here. And actually somebody, a youngster said to me recently, well, why is it a problem? And I said, well, a one-liner is, by the time you're my age, if we don't change the way we work, basic rate tax will be 60%. How do you feel about that? And she said, well, then we need to do something about it. And I said, well, one of the problems is we've got more older people and less younger people. And she said, so let's get some more 16-year-olds. And I said, well, the last time I checked, that took 17 years or thereabouts. Oh, she says. So actually, we've known about this for years, but actually we can't do anything about it. We can't change it. That's the way the UK population largely is going to change. So we're going to have loads and loads of older people. And this just gives you a little bit more detail on it. So these are the over 65s. You can see how that's really starting to change. This is the number of millions of over 65, over 65s. This is the millions of over 85s. So huge, huge change. And the key point here is we're never going to go back. The centre of gravity, the age centre of gravity, if you like, of the UK population is going to get older, and that has implications. So let's just, I'm not going to ask you to answer these questions aloud, but I'd just like you to do them in your head. You know I'm setting you up, which is why I'm not going to do these aloud. But older people do actually cost us a huge amount of money, don't they? The NHS and all the rest of it. Actually, most of the over 85s are actually in care homes. That's what a lot of us believe. They don't have any money anyway, so why on earth are you listening to me? You can't do anything about it anyway, so it's all genetic, and social services sort all of the problems that older people have anyway, don't they? So if you've got answers to those in your head, now let me tell you the truth. So across the country, actually in 2010, their net contribution to the UK economy was 40 billion. In 2030, that will be 77 billion. That's net. That's after all the NHS costs, after all the social care costs. They're all in care homes. No, they're not. About 10% of over 85s are in care homes. They don't have any money. Actually, the over 50s have 80% of the UK's wealth. 80% of the UK's wealth. Yes, you can do something about how you age. Actually, it's only about 25% genetic. It's incredibly malleable. So the way people age and the implications of that aren't static. And the difference in the best and the worst in the UK is about 17 and a half years of healthy aging, if you like. And no social services, actually, they don't pay 70% of the bill now, and they're going to pay even less, in case you hadn't noticed. So actually, what I'm trying to show you here is actually it doesn't look how we often think that it looks. So what is old? Well, actually, let's just show you what we said in the UK. There's been studies done across Europe. So this is what the average Briton thinks, that you stop being young at 35 and you start being old at 58. This is what the youngsters think. You stop being young at 28 and you're old by 54. And this is what the over 80s feel, that actually you stop being young at 42 and you start to get old at 67. So actually we don't really agree, but the point is that actually there isn't really a good definition. This is probably slightly more helpful, that actually that's probably today, remember life expectancy is changing 5 hours a day, which is 2.5 years, 2.5 years a decade. So loss of independence, and that's got a real implication in the kitchen, which we'll see in a minute. These kinds of things, that's what a lot of people think. This is in the States. Oops, let's get the right button. But actually what would be much more helpful than thinking about people in terms of their age is thinking about the group they're in, the social group, the kind of society, if you like, that they grew up in. So if we start to categorise people like that, that might actually be much more helpful. The truth is, age is just a chronological number. Actually, your biological age is not the same as your chronological age, and it can even be slightly reversed. So my point here really is that we need to think more in terms of the groups that people are in. And actually, if you just look at broadband use, obviously the youngsters are there, you know, most of them have got it. This is again US, I think. And it's true that our older generation, if you like, the over 74s, that's less. But actually, as you see, it's not truly really about age or group really, because actually what you see here, again, I know you can't see all the detail, but the more money you have, the more likely you are to have a cell phone or be on the internet and so on. So actually, it's really about whether you've got money or not. The truth is, wealthy older people go on the internet all the time. It's the poor people that can't afford to that don't. But that's a kind of good and bad for us, depending on who you're trying to reach. So what I'm trying to say really is actually, let's follow the money. Let's not worry about where people's age is, because it really isn't very helpful. And how we age varies hugely. This is some work I'm doing with some colleagues in Newcastle. And actually, you go to the posh area in the northeast, a 55-year-old would expect to be 75 before they had any problems. And we'll bring that back into the kitchen in a minute or two. Get on the metro, go for 20 minutes, get off here. That's 11 years sooner. So actually, if I'm going to sell posh kitchens in Newcastle, I go to Pontyland. And that's where all the money is and all the people that are healthy and all the rest of it. But actually, maybe there's a market here if we could just understand that a bit better. So that's just a little bit of the stats. So now let's look at the money side of it, because we're only really interested, if we're absolutely honest, we're only really interested if these folk have got money. So back to older people, this is what they look like, isn't it? This is what we think. Or not. And we all love that one. Smoking's bad for you, well, apparently. So whatever we think getting old looks like, we've probably got that wrong. It really isn't like that, and I think that's really important. If we're going to understand this market, we're going to understand these people, we've got to break with these stereotypes. What happened to Grandad is not what will happen in a couple of generations' time. It just isn't like that at all. Here's some of the new pensioners. I bet you can't guess some of these names. Do you think these are your typical image of a pensioner? You think they're going to behave the way that we think traditional pensioners behave? I don't think so. Just imagine telling Sylvester Stallone that he should get his bath board and be grateful. I mean, it's not going to be the same. This is a site set up by some older women who want to grow old disgracefully. And the point is that actually you have to grow old, but you don't have to grow up. And actually that is the characteristic of a lot of older people today. They're growing old, but they're not growing up. This is a company I run on the side. Well, I kind of got spun into the university, but we work with older people around resolving functional problems. And I'll show you a little bit of evidence around that in the kitchen in a minute. But actually what was interesting, we consult with, at Newcastle, we've got about 6,000 older people that we can interact with and use to discuss and understand their views of things. I warn you, if you're interested, it's very dangerous, because you'll ask them a question and they'll tell you that's not the question you should have asked. And then they'll tell you the question that you should have asked, and then they'll answer that. So, but actually it's very insightful if you don't mind sitting there and waiting while they criticise everything you just said. We took a group of 65 to 92-year-olds and we said, so talk about the kitchen. And they drew a cartoon, actually. One of them was a cartoonist, and this is how they see their problems in the kitchen. So he's managing to undo his jar. Actually, he's tightening it up because the picture's the wrong way around, but we won't worry about that. And they're busy in the lounge watching their telly while their kitchen burns down. It's an interesting one. The only time I've ever nearly burnt down my kitchen wasn't because I was watching the TV or I was cognitively impaired. It's because I was distracted by my children. So actually, again, the point is this is not an age thing. It's something that recurs for different reasons across the life course. Tesco's has started to spot this one. They sent a bunch of our older people off to Germany to spy on the German supermarket chain that had just changed its strategy slightly. So they're looking at how to produce supermarkets that are more friendly for older people. Here's the Kaisers in Germany, and 60% of their customers are over 50. They can't open the stores fast enough. They beat their own aggressive forecast by 25% year on year. So if you think older people don't have money, I suggest they do if you just do the right things to get them in. This I'd show you. So I'm the miserable so-and-so in the middle. This is self-reported well-being and happiness, actually. So here's another thing. Older people are grumpy so-and-sos. No, they're not. They're the happiest people in society. It's folk in middle age that are grumpy people. These are the people with the money, and they're getting happier. So they're not even difficult people necessarily to deal with. So where is the money? Well, this is just distribution of household wealth in the UK, and you can see there's a huge amount. You know, these are the people we target with all our marketing, aren't these youngsters down here? And look where all the money is. And I'll show you that in a little bit more detail in a second. This just gives you an idea. Here's the revenues, here's the 40 billion, here's the 75 billion nearly that's coming in. So look at all that money that these 1.26 trillion they're going to spend, or they're going to contribute or whatever, to the UK economy in the next under 20 years now. They have 80% of the nation's wealth. They're responsible for 40% of consumer spend. The over 50s spend £260 billion a year in the UK. There are 20 million of them and growing. They buy 80% of all the top range cars, 50% skincare products, 80% of all leisure cruises. They spend 3 times as much as the 30s. Where do we target all our marketing? I'll show you in a minute. And they have 10% of marketing spend. Isn't that extraordinary? So they have 80% of the country's wealth, and most of your competitors aren't even trying to talk to them, which I think is just extraordinary. This is, put it in context for you, there's the money, there's your marketing spend. And I suggest we haven't quite got that right. Another little thing here, this is, do you have too little money to do what you want? 71, these are all over 50s, 71% said never or rarely do they not have the money to do the things they want. So they're not really stuck for money, aren't they? And this is just online spending. So here you go, you've read these as fast as I can put them up anywhere. Even social care spending will grow despite everything you hear in the news. They volunteer hugely, they contribute to charity, they do family donations and all the rest of it. The key point here really is there isn't any such thing as an older market. They're just people with more years on them. That's all they are. They think. So I've done this thing before on bathrooms, and I couldn't find a slide to do quite the same comparison in kitchens, but I showed a picture of a bathroom that a youngster said, that's just the kind of bathroom that I wanted. And then I took it to somebody in their 50s and said, what do you think about that? They said, that's just the bathroom I wanted. Why would we lose our sense of taste and interest and all the rest of it because we got a bit older? None of us do we? Our spending habits will change, but as we said, it's really about income, not really about age particularly. There will be some changes as a society ages, but actually that's opportunities as well, and we'll see some of those in a minute. But actually this is quite important. Older people don't just buy products for themselves. Actually there was some other research I dug out somewhere that showed they have huge influence on their children and especially their grandchildren. So grandchildren will often ask their grandparents about mobile phones. Get that? But they do apparently, and they take that quite seriously. Probably the grandparent that's paying for it. So maybe that's what that's about. And there are some changes, and we'll talk about these a little bit, but there are some physical changes as we get older. So let's talk about that a little bit. So actually, in the last stats I could pull up quickly, in the kitchen alone, we have 262,000 accidents. But actually, a load of people are telling you, I can't get good emotions in the kitchen because I can't do the things I want to do. One of the last signs before somebody basically has to have full-time care is they stop being able to use their kitchen. They stop being able to prepare their own food. So actually, when that happens, then they start to need really very expensive care, and they don't want to go there. They don't want to go there. It's just that sometimes the things that we do and the designs of our kitchens don't help them. You all thought that they're all gaga over 65, didn't you? Actually, lots of people think they are, and actually only 25% of them think they have any kind of memory loss at all. So just again, this is our perceptions of what it's like to be old, and this is the reality by those that experience it, and quite a big difference. 32%, a third of them are completely wrong. We looked at everybody in Newcastle over 85 because we thought it was quite interesting and nobody had done it before. There's slightly more women. They're in sheltered housing or residential care, but actually only about a quarter of them. The rest of them are at home with kitchens. 20% had no, these are activities of daily living, so they don't have any trouble at all, but actually the truth is that some of them did require some help, and a lot of that is to do with the kitchen. Not all, but quite a bit of it's to do with the kitchen. Actually a small percentage of them did actually need full-time help, but actually that's, of all the over 85s, that's quite a small percentage. But we're all, all our bits flag and fall off as we get older, don't they? So here's a chart that shows that's not strictly true. So you see this 88-year-old here who's got more muscle mass in his quadriceps than most of the rest of the population. So it's kind of use it or lose it. So, if you use it lots, you keep it. If you don't, it drops off a bit. But there's huge things. So let's look at muscle power. Here we go. Yes, it does fall off a little bit with age, but again, actually, there's such huge scatter. It's more about what people do with themselves, how they exercise, how they use it. So encouraging people to use their kitchen and stay active in their kitchen is actually, now here's the thing we could take to the NHS, it's a health intervention. It makes them stay healthier. Actually cooking their own food and staying independent in the kitchen keeps them healthier. Extraordinary statistic. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you that there's an opportunity. Now we've got to look at what are some of the challenges and opportunities around that. How am I doing for time? Still okay for time. So the future kitchen, so this is great fun typing this into Google Images. So there's one you might have seen. I'm probably not allowed to name it round here, but that's IKEA. That's what Star Trek thought it looked like. Actually, the colour scheme's not terribly different. It's a bit bigger on Star Trek than it is in the IKEA kitchen. But actually, as you'll see, quite a few of these things, older and particular people, quite a lot of these things already. It's just the rest of us haven't cottoned on. This is an appliance in the kitchen of the future, apparently. Believe it or not, this is a washing machine. You put your clothes in here with some water and do hoopla and stay fit. Well, if you want to market that one, good luck. I think that's probably not the real place we want to go. Here's some more vision of the future. I don't think I really want to walk into my kitchen and face that. I'd rather cook the food myself, but this is just where some people think it's going. This is interesting. These are a couple of pictures of kitchens. What's interesting about this is that the average kitchen size in the UK, I'm told statistically, is around 10 foot by 10 foot. So when we start showing people these lovely pictures, and you might hate that, you might like it, but it's a nice big kitchen, isn't it? It's just that most of us have got kitchens about this size. So maybe we need to help people understand how, all of that stuff fits in there, if that's what we're trying to sell them. So I want to talk about a different way, a way of sort of trying to engage with people. And say this is challenging, but it's so this was a task that some of a local engineering company in the northeast did street furniture, and they got involved in with a group of older people that we arranged for them. And in fact, the key point here is that they didn't want their own bench; they just wanted a bench that they could use too. And actually, we put this up on the campus. It's a blue because that's the colour he had. So it's not the prettiest prototype, but it's pretty good. And everybody's walking by. That's not an older person's bench. That's true. It's not an older person's bench. It's a bench that older people can use and younger people. You can tie your dog lead around there, hang your washing basket, not your washing basket, your shopping. You can lean your walking stick if you've got one. You can put a cup on there, put your mug down. Actually, everybody can use that bench. And older people. And actually our vision, if you like, at Newcastle for the future kitchen is a kitchen that everybody can use irrespective of age, not a kitchen that's designed for old people. And that's what they say quite vociferously they want. Here's an example of how not to do it. Answers on a postcard, please. I took this on a beach in North Wales. This I call exclusive design. I took it 6 years ago now. The best answer I've had so far is 112 is the international emergency number. But if you're in trouble, good luck working that out. And I thought they'll have fixed that by now, won't they? So I was in Norfolk this summer. And here we are, a bright new version now, still with 1, 2, 3 on, and nobody's quite sure. They've covered it over. They don't really know what to put on top of it. Nobody knows. Somebody's drowning in the sea, and we're all struggling, having a debate about how to dial fund. This is how not to do it. This is how to exclude everybody. It's the opposite of actually what we're trying to do. So let's talk about IKEA's kitchen, if I'm allowed to use that word around here. Look, height adjustable cupboards. Actually, people with disabilities pay a fortune for height adjustable cupboards because you don't do them mainstream. But my wife can't reach any of the cupboards either. In fact, I've never lived in a house where she could open the kitchen window safely. So why don't we make the kitchen window easy for people to open? It's not the sexiest appliance, but actually maybe that's what people would like to do. There's all kinds of things, we've got smart fridges and we've got comms centres and all the rest of it. Actually, there's a lot in there, but perhaps not for the reasons that they think. So let's talk about another future kitchen. So that looks like a fairly standard kitchen. Again, it might not be one as good as the ones that you put in, but it's a fairly standard kitchen, isn't it? It's not actually, it's a research kitchen. And hiding behind all of those yellow things are sensors that tell us what people are doing in the kitchen. And actually, one of the really interesting things about good evidence-based research is you discover that what people say they do is not what they do. And in fact, we've even put little 3D accelerometers in the kitchen utensils so we can work out whether they're chopping, whisking, whatever they're doing. So actually, our understanding of how people use the kitchen is really beginning to grow. But actually, there are other reasons for this. So yes, there's a pretty TV thing sort of displayed on the wall, but the reason we put it on there is, yes, you can see your recipes. So I read a stat the other day that a whole load of people, this was from the HSC, a whole load of people get injured running from the kitchen to the TV to watch what James Martin's doing on Saturday Kitchen and running back to do it. So put a TV in the kitchen somewhere where they can do it safely. Might be good at it. So we did. We put one in. But the other thing is that this kitchen actually knows what you're doing and therefore also understands whether the things are in the right order, going the right way. So if I put something on the hob, wherever it is, over here somewhere, and actually I leave it on there, and part of the process is I'm going to leave it on there, set the timer for 10 minutes, and then I shove off and forget about it. The kitchen's going to say, hang on a minute, you need to come back and do something, and it's going to try and call me, or it might intervene if I forget. I know it's a tough market out there. The extraordinary statistic is we spend millions and millions and millions of pounds adapting older people's kitchens to make them safe, when actually it could all be built in there. So we make cookers that turn themselves off. Why can't everybody have a cooker that turns themselves off? We make special taps and things so that they can turn them. Why don't we just give people lever taps? We make special levers that you can put on them. They look like hell, but hey, they work. We make sinks that automatically switch themselves off when you leave them on and stuff like that. But actually, who hasn't left a tap running at some stage? So this is just. There's huge amounts of stuff in here, but the point is that actually, so what we do here is if somebody gets out of sync, because one of the things with early cognitive decline is you don't forget what you were doing, you forget where you were in the process. So then they try and put milk in the kettle because they've forgotten they were going for the water. So up it comes here, we change it from the TV channel to, oh, by the way, are you sure you want to take the milk that you've just taken out of the fridge and put it in the kettle? That's probably not a good idea. Oh no, I remember, and back they are. But so much of this stuff could be built in everybody's kitchen. All this stuff about the food going off. I went and saw my 86-year-old granny not so very long ago, and she offered me a salmon sandwich, which sounded really nice until she took a tin of salmon out of the freezer. And then I got a little bit uneasy about it. But actually, a fridge that knew what was in it and all the rest of it when things had gone off might actually do us all a huge favour. So that's just a little kind of glimpse. So if you want to understand, by all means, I've got loads of cards. If you want to understand how we can help you understand what people do in the kitchen and what's going on there, then do ask. These I just put up as some of the challenges which I don't think are particularly age-related, but they are a problem of some older people. So it isn't just an age problem, starting fires in there, but so why don't we do that for everybody? Can't stand long enough. You ever thought of putting somewhere just to make it easy for people to work on their work surfaces if they can't stand up for hours? A lot of older people get something which screws up all your wonderful design of the kitchen because they now fill it with a perching stool. But all of these things, I've just replaced a load of heavy pans with some really high-tech aluminium ones and so on. There's lots of things that we can do here and we can build into our products. So final little thing now on engaging with older people, I've kind of alluded to this a bit. When you start asking them difficult questions, we talked about toileting and stuff like that, and they said, the less said about that, the better, dear, which isn't a great start to sort of in-depth research, but hey, we'll work with them. Actually, if the problem is that nobody asked them. Germaine Greer said nobody wanted to sell to her just because she hit 60. So it's all the over 50s going and buying their things and going out to restaurants, but actually they have these lovely candlelit things, but nobody can read without their reading glasses. So we've no idea what's on the menu anyway. I mean, how easy is that to fix? Here's the average age of marketing agency staff. So do we really think that this is the best way of reaching the over 50s? I'm not saying we shouldn't use youngsters in our marketing agencies, but actually, if they really have no experience, maybe we should just be looking to have a broader age range. It is extraordinary what people will tell you if you ask them. So here's some quick summary of some stuff from Age UK research, where they said that there's definitely ageism in the marketplace. I think we're all guilty of that. Certainly women and older people generally are unrepresented in advertising. I mean, why don't we put some older people in some of our ads? We don't tend to, do we? But why not? And it's beginning to come. And we're quite critical of the young marketer, but actually it's not all their fault. So that's a summary of the ageing population. What I hope I've done is convince you that both there's an opportunity, there's a need, and they have money. Thank you.